are recording.
All right, good morning. This is Vicki Walker, Director of the Department of State Lands, and I call the meeting to order of the South Slough Management Commission. And I just realized my file is next to my bedside where I was reading it last night. So hang tight 1 second.
Oh, I want to see that puppy.
While we're waiting, Sean, do you want to do a sound check? Just make sure our audio is working.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I took this to bed last night to read. A lot of times I can retain things better, but it mostly was because my day was so busy yesterday, I ran out of time. We're going to start out with introductions now that we've called the meeting to order. So I'll let folks go around. Let's introduce the commission members first. And let's see, I guess we'll just start with Trent. I see Trent on my screen.
Hi, I'm Trent Hatfield, education teacher at Bandon High School.
Oh, and are you in school today? Because I see a blackboard in the back and a whiteboard and you've got a mask on.
I am at school and I could have somebody walk in my room any minute, so I leave my mask on.
Okay, well, good for you. My son and his wife are both teachers, high school teachers, and they are back in the classroom. And so is my first grade grandson. He goes twice a week now. And the rest of the time is online learning. So this has been a long haul with COVID. All right, so next, Chief, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I am past chief, retired chief. Chief Brainerd of the Cooslow tribe.
There you go. Sometimes retired is a good thing, but you still retain that title because you earned it. All right.
I'm not sure that retirement is all it's cracked up to be. I've been more busy now than I've been before.
Yeah, I know. That honey-do list grows big, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, after 12 years of chiefdom, it's a long list.
Yeah, well, I'll be joining you in about 5 years, but right now I'm holding the line. All right, let's see who else we have. Lonnie.
Hi, this is Lonnie Mays, and I represent Public at Large. And I'm streaming in here all the way from South Carolina right now. So
wow.
While we full-time RV and visiting with my brother down here in the upstate South Carolina area.
Oh, nice. Well, good. I'm glad you could join us and take some time away from your family. All right, Maya.
Hi, I'm Maya Watts, and I'm the education coordinator at the University of Oregon's Marine Lab, the Oregon Institute of Marine Biology.
All right, thank you for joining us. That's a beautiful picture in the background. And I'll make sure I correct that as Maya, not Maya. All right, Bob Cowan.
Morning, I'm Bob Cowan. I'm the director at the Hatfield Marine Science Center in Newport. And I'm probably going to keep my video off because I have a very touchy internet provider, at least in what they provide me.
Yeah, mine has been telling me it's unstable. So at some point I'll probably have to go off screen as well. All right. Did I hear you say Dave Kronsteiner was joining us or someone else from the port?
Yes, Dave is here.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm Dave Kronsteiner, representing the Port of Coos Bay. Good morning.
And it looks like you're in the office. All right. Did I miss anyone else from the Management Commission? Oh, of course I did. Chris Wall.
I'm non-voting. It's okay. No, but Good morning, everyone. Chris Wall with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management. We still have restrictions with Zoom, so I don't get to have a cool background like the rest of you. We don't have full accessibility, but I'm enjoying all the coastal photos. And I am a non-voting member representing NOAA on the commission.
Awesome. Well, I'm trying to manage my pup here. I've got to get the garbage can up here. The paper recycling can is in here next in my office, and he likes to pull all the paper out, and I'm just in the mood today. So, all right, who else do we have that I've missed?
So that is, those are all the commission members.
All right, thank you. So how about the rest of you all want to identify yourselves? Alice, I see Alice.
Sorry, having trouble getting the mute off. Alice Yates, I'm the Stewardship Coordinator at the Reserve.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to your report today. Rebecca, I'm just going to go down the list on my participant list so that y'all don't have to talk over each other. So Rebecca.
Rebecca Muse, Operations Coordinator at the Reserve.
Extraordinaire. And Catherine.
I'm here.
Hello, Reedsport.
Yeah.
Allie.
Morning, I'm Allie Helms, the Estuary Monitoring Coordinator with the science team.
Yay. Christine.
Christine Moffett, I am not at Simpson Reef, but I should be, right? President of Friends of South Slough.
And
my colleague here, maybe he can introduce himself as well. Todd Aru.
It'll be Todd Buchholz, Vice President and Treasurer of Friends of the South Slough. Good morning, everybody.
Yay. I want to personally thank both of you for the support for our budget hearing and all the letters we got. And we'll talk about the legislation as well, but thank you. We really appreciated it. Let's see, Jamie.
Morning, everybody. Jamie, I'm the Education Coordinator at the Reserve.
Great. Daniel.
I'm Daniel Dobrashelsky. I'm a Seasonal Education Specialist at South Slough Reserve.
Awesome. Let's see, what have I, Carrie.
Morning, everyone. I'm Kiri Halley. I'm the GIS Specialist at South Slough.
Nice. Yeah, you've been with us, has it been a year now?
Yeah, maybe going on a year and a half.
Yeah, okay, good deal.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Your names keep jumping around. Sabra.
Deborah Comet, Coastal Training Program Coordinator.
Welcome. Sean.
Good morning, I'm Sean Schooler. I'm the Research Coordinator.
Good morning. Oh, love that rainbow in the background. And let me see. I think I got everybody unless someone skipped around and I missed the name. Did I miss anyone?
I don't know if I introduced myself for the record. I'm Bree Adnok, Reserve Manager at South Slough Reserve.
You did not, so thank you. So I like this. A lot of us have coastal backgrounds. Mine is from the top of Proposal Rock in Nesquin when I hiked up there on a lovely spring day. Most of you are the South Coast. So, all right, well, we will get started on our next agenda item, which is a review of the meeting minutes that Catherine prepared and did a great job. I read through them again last night to familiarize myself with what we talked about last time. So I would take a motion to approve the minutes from the 157th regular meeting of the South Slough Reserve Management Commission from December 3, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Who made the motion and who seconded it? Chief.
Chief. Lonnie Mays, I made the motion, I believe.
Okay. And Chief seconded then,
Yes.
okay? All right, just want to help out Catherine here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, you know, I was a court reporter for 25 years, and so I'm very cautious about making sure we know who's speaking for what. All right, any discussion about those minutes? Any corrections, any comments? Then all those in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, minutes are approved. We will move into our public input. Bree, do we have anyone from the public that wishes to testify today?
We do not. Kathy did not receive any requests for public participation.
All right, and our great folks from the South Slough, Friends of South Slough, are always on our agenda now, so we have elevated them in stature. So that's good. All right, well then we'll move to the next agenda item, to old business, and that's our fantastic legislative update. And we have great news to share. So Bree, rock star, Bree testified in the hearing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to you to give an update.
Okay, great. So there are two updates, two legislative bills I wanted to just provide the commission with some information on. If you all remember, on December 3rd, the Management Commission, you all approved a legislative concept to be prepared by the Department of State Lands and Reserve staff related to the management area of the National Estuarine Research Reserve. This is now Senate Bill 126. And just a reminder for what this bill does, it would amend our statute ORS 273.553 so that lands that we already own and manage that are located north of Lino Island could be brought into our National Estuarine Research Reserve boundary. And the bill just allows that to happen. It just changes the language so that we no longer have the Lino Island as a boundary. But the actual boundary expansion to change the reserve boundary would go through a federal process in coordination with NOAA. So you all voted to move that legislative concept forward. It was introduced to the legislature. We held in February 2 virtual information sessions for the general public, for stakeholders, to provide information about the bill and answer questions. February 8th, we had a public hearing with the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Wildfire Recovery, and we received letters of support, or I should say letters of support were submitted as testimony from the Confederated Tribes of the Coast-Lower-Umpqua-Isla Indians, the Coquel Indian Tribe, the League of Women Voters, and the Friends of South Slough. The Port of Coos Bay submitted a letter that they indicated they needed more time to review the bill and understand it. February 24th, the bill received a work session with the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Wildfire Recovery, and they voted to move the bill to the Senate floor for a vote. And I do want to note that this decision, this vote, was helped by the fact that the previous 2 weeks, there was a lot of coordination between the department and the Port of Coos Bay to come to an agreement and submit a joint letter of support for the bill, outlining that the two entities will enter into a memorandum of understanding to work together should the bill become law and we go through a boundary adjustment. In March, it passed the Senate chamber. In April, it had its first reading with the House and then was referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources. And then the one date that's not in your packet is just this past Tuesday. We had a public hearing before that Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, and we received a public testimony in support of the bill as well. So that seems to be moving along. Are there any questions or additional points or thoughts you'd like to share?
I think the bill got a favorable review in the House committee as well. It wasn't set for a work session that day. So they will put it on the calendar for a work session and move the bill. So if some of you are not familiar, I spent 10 years in the legislature, so I know that process pretty well, but they set things for public hearing. Sometimes they do public hearing / possible work session, but in this case, it was just a public hearing. And so now it needs another hearing to move the bill out of committee. And then once it's voted out of committee, it'll go to the third reading calendar on the speaker's desk and be put up for a vote. And if there are no changes to the bill, it doesn't have to go back to the Senate, and it just goes on to the governor's office. So I think we're in good shape. It's still early in the session before things get crazy. So I think we're doing good. All right, any other questions or comments? And
I'll just offer a congrats from my perspective on the work so far. I heard a bit about the effort that went into all this and the work with the port, and so I just happy to hear the positive progress on it.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to say that it was a little surprise when the port expressed concern, and then when we had a chance to visit about it, we were able to assuage them that we're doing all of this that we do now, we're going to do again, and even more so when we make application for the boundary adjustment. And so there's lots, the thing about this process is there's lots of opportunity for input and conversation. So these are not done deals at all, which is great. I love the public involvement and the public engagement, and appreciate Bree and the South Slough staff for holding the public engagement meetings prior to the bill being heard, to give people more of an opportunity to hear about it. So thank you all. Okay, and then Bree, was there yet another piece of legislation you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just wanted to give the commission a heads up about Senate Bill 5539. So this is the proposed budget for the Department of State Lands as a whole. And so that includes the operational funding for the reserve. That's where our state funds would come from for the 2021 to 2023 biennium. So at the end of March, on March 30th, Chair Director Walker presented that bill to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means Subcommittee for Natural Resources. And then the next day there was a public hearing on that bill, and letters were submitted by the Friends of South Slough. So thank you for that. And then 7 teachers, Jamie and Eric did a great job reaching out to teachers to let them know that the bill was having a public hearing, and 7 teachers from across the state submitted testimony in support of our budget. And that's actually the only, that's as far as I know. So Chair Walker, if you have additional updates on where that is, it'd be great to hear them.
Well, my only update is that it's clear that members of the legislature love the South Slough. So I think that's great. And one of the comments yesterday, or what day was that you had the hearing? It was the day I had to go to the doctor.
It's Tuesday afternoon.
Tuesday, yeah. Representative Reardon sits on that committee, and he's also co-chair of the sub. And so his comment was that he really supported the bill because he wanted one of the good things about Senate Bill 126 is when we bring that property into the boundary, then we become eligible for federal dollars. And right now, because it's just stewardship land, we don't. So he was thrilled about that. So yeah, and I gave a report during the budget hearing that DSL with Bree and the South Slough Reserve staff had done research for the last 2 years on finding a different partner for South Slough, and had made the determination that it should stay with DSL, and the land board did not disagree. It was not an action item before the land board because it already is part of of DSL, so it was just simply an informational item, and the land board wasn't going to disagree. And also I think we've got the research now into the record, and because the land board changes, their makeup changes as the governor, treasurer, and secretary of state change. And so now if that issue comes up again, we'll be able to point them to the record and the exhaustive research and determinations that we made. So I think we have successfully put that to rest and have embraced our partnership with the South Slough as part of the DSL family, which is terrific. And so I want the staff to all rest comfortably. I know it's been very difficult on staff, wondering where they were going to be under whose management. So yes, that's all great. I do not know any more about our budget. They usually don't start running those through until after the May forecast. And that will come, I think it's like in the third week in May. So it just sits there while they do other things. But it looks good. I think we got positive support. And I was in Alexandria, Virginia during that time. Like Lonnie, I traveled, but I traveled to Alexandria because my daughter was having a baby. And so I was there to assist for 5 weeks, came back thoroughly exhausted, but also exhilarated with the experience. But during the budget hearing, if you listen to it, you can hear her birds in the background. She has 2 budgie rigger parakeets that she saved. My daughter likes to collect animals that have been discarded. And she had 6 birds at one time. Thank goodness there were only 2 because they kept up quite a chorus of music. But it was a great hearing, and I appreciate all the preparation that went into it. All right, so Bree or anyone have any other comments before we move on to new business? All right, then we'll move on to new business, and there's some really exciting stuff in here. I read through the Wasson Upland Forest Plan action item last night, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing about that. So I'm going to turn it over to staff to make that presentation for us, and there's probably some screen sharing we're going to do here.
Yes, I'm going to introduce this agenda item and then I'll pass it off to Alice, who will deliver the full presentation. But before I do that, I just wanted to note Deborah Rudd joined us. Deborah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry for being late. Had to get my second COVID shot this morning.
Oh, good for you.
I got my sticker.
Yeah, I got my COVID shot, my 1 shot. I had the Johnson & Johnson. I got that in Virginia while I was there. I was very grateful. So that's awesome. Okay, back to you, Bree.
Great. So
Deborah's going to be up talking about the pampas grass removal project with Alice after we get done with this one. So
yep. So on page 10 and 11 of your meeting materials is just a summary of this agenda item. So this agenda item is approval of the Wasson Uplands Restoration Plan. So the subject is enhancing forest health and reducing wildfire risk in the forested uplands of the Wasson Creek watershed managed by the South Slough Reserve. And the issue we have before you is whether the commission, whether you all should approve the South Slough Reserve to begin implementation of the restoration activities as outlined in the Wasson Uplands Restoration Plan. So on page 10, it outlines the authorities, the statute for the management of the reserve, and the authorities of the Management Commission to make these decisions. And I'll just give you a brief summary of how this project came to be and where we are, and then I'll pass it off to Alice for the details of the plan. So this plan, the Wasson Creek Watershed Project, has been introduced and presented before the commission multiple times, sort of as it was being scoped and designed since 2005. If you remember, Hannah Schrager, our previous stewardship coordinator, was spearheading that. And so she's delivered several presentations to those of you who were on the commission at that time. So since 2015, the reserve has been developing a holistic ridgetop to estuary restoration plan for the Wasson Creek watershed. And prior to the state owning this area, the lowlands of the watershed were drained and used as pasture land, while the upland forests were harvested as active timberlands and then transferred to the reserve. And there's been no real forest management since that time. So as a result, the lowlands are overgrown with invasive plants like reed canary grass, and the uplands have been grown back very dense forests with few large trees and sparse understories. So the plan for this watershed is to look at the entire watershed, the ridgetop all the way down to the estuary. So it does consist of 3 parts: a Wasson Creek channel design, so to reconnect the pasture as it is now, to create a channel and reconnect that area to the floodplain, a vegetation restoration plan for the area, and then the Wasson Upland Restoration Plan, which is what you'll be hearing about today. Excuse me. So the South Slough Reserve is requesting approval to begin implementing the Wasson Uplands Restoration Plan, which was recently updated through a robust active engagement with technical advisors. So Alice has done a great job pulling together a technical advisory team, working with grant-supported contractors and reserve staff to update this plan and complete it into the form it is today. So the completion of the plan also coincides with a funding opportunity from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for $64,203 to begin implementing the plan. And South Slough Reserve is partnering with the Friends of South Slough, who would be the entity to receive and administer those funds. The other 2 parts of the plan are ongoing, developing, working towards completing those, and we'll be presenting those to you as they are completed. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Alice, who will provide more information about the project area and then the plan as a whole.
Great, thanks. It looks like you're seeing my note screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let me see if I can switch that. How is that now?
That's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot. Well, thanks for the introduction, Bree. I am going to cover that a little bit now, but it'll cut off some of what I was going to say, so that's great. So I just want to say, even though I'm presenting today, all of this work was really done by my predecessor, Hannah Schrager, and a large team of people. And so those on the advisory team, it's a long list that I won't go through it here, but you can see it in the plan and obviously read it. And so where we're at the moment is the plan was developed before I got into this position of stewardship coordinator, and we've recently assembled the advisory team again and reviewed the plan and submitted it to the commission. As Bree said, we're looking for a request to approve the uplands component of this restoration plan. But what I'm going to do is give you a brief overview of an introduction to the Wasson Creek, the project as a whole, and then some specific details about the upland forest management section of it. You can see here, this is an aerial view of Wasson Creek. So to give you an idea of where we are talking about, where the project area is, you can see South Slough watershed here in brown, the reserve boundary. This is a little bit of an old map, I should say our managed lands. And then in the orange is the Wasson project area, and you can see a close up here of that Wasson drainage. So a little bit of a backstory about Wasson area. In the early 1900s, it was heavily impacted. As Bree said, there was heavy timber harvesting, as well as converting those wetlands into pastures, ditching and diking. You can see here in this old aerial image, the drainage to the north here with the pasture land is the Wasson Creek drainage. In 2009, it was identified as high priority area at South Slough, and in 2012, the reserve acquired this western section of the land. In 2015, OWEB funded the plan development, which includes a ridgetop to estuary plan for the whole watershed. In 2017, it was listed in the strategic plan and then presented to the commission at that time. In 2018, the plan was completed, but it was never presented to the commission upon completion. And then now in 2021, as Bree said, US Fish and Wildlife Service is provided funding to start implementation of the Uplands section. And the advisory group is currently reviewing the lowlands component of this restoration plan. So we're looking to move the Uplands section through, even though this is thought of as a holistic project that really includes both uplands and lowlands. This will be the last component of the Winchester Tidelands Restoration Project area. So you can see in this map the yellow polygon areas, the yellow covered areas, are areas that have been previously restored starting back in 1996. And you can see in the circled area here, that's the Wasson drainage, where there was the dike removed near the confluence to Winchester Creek, but nothing else has been done in that area. So why was it designated as a high priority area? As Bree said, that the lowlands were extremely altered. So Wasson Creek at the moment flows through 2 incised ditches, and this has resulted in a disconnect between the floodplain, and there's limited flooding of the system, very dry, limited wetland functioning, and reduced habitat complexity in this area. And also dominated by invasive species, mainly reed canary grass, but also pasture grasses and a few others such as Himalayan blackberry. And then in the uplands, it's very poor quality upland habitat. You can see in this image here, there's a lot of fine materials that can pose a high fire risk. It's ecologically compromised because these areas, when they were replanted at very high densities and no thinning has occurred. And so what we get at the moment are high density forest stands with small stem trees, and they're even aged, so they're all planted at the same time. There's been limited recruitment for new species. So it's very few species, primarily Douglas fir. Also repressed understories, you can see here, not much is going on down here on the forest floor, and the trees are growing quite slowly because of that heavy competition. This is consequentially reduced opportunities for large woody debris recruitment, which is important for wildlife and recruitment into streams as well. So if we take the do nothing approach, what we're expecting to see is suppression mortality. So that means that some of these trees will die, and you think, well, maybe this is, that's what we're going to spend a lot of money trying to do, is take out some of these trees. But what this method would mean is that we would end up with a lot of small snags, so a lot of small standing trees and downed wood, which just increases that fire risk as well. Also limited growth of crown and branches and bole or stem development of these trees. And so there's very low quality for wildlife use. And again, very few species and very few opportunities to get new species in there and increase rarer species. And then, our objective at South Slough is really to progress these forests towards old growth conditions. And so the do nothing approach will result in very slow development to those conditions that are desired. And we're hoping that our prescriptions will help speed up that process and increase that variability of old growth conditions. As I said, the restoration plan was completed in 2018, which includes the components in the lowlands as well as the uplands. I'm not going to talk about the lowlands component today, but I just wanted to kind of point out that the objective of the lowlands component is to turn this low quality habitat into high quality complex habitat with a diversity of native species rather than being dominated by these single invasive species. I also wanted to point out the public access of this area. There are existing trails, and what our at the moment, this is a high use area, and we are definitely looking for re-establishing these trails once the restoration project has completed. We're also looking to improve accessibility. These trails have a unique opportunity because they are quite a low slope on the trails, and so this provides opportunity for increasing our accessibility, where our other trails are quite steep and have sort of limited availability of that. So we're really hoping that this area can be a beautiful space that people can come and use and visit, also educational opportunities. So we have a lot of restoration projects that have been done in the South Slough, but not all are easily accessible and easy to communicate and talk about and educate people about restoration projects. And this is an easy place to access, and so a great opportunity. And we really want to encourage use of cultural resources in this area. There's a lot of species in our vegetation plan in the lowlands and also in the uplands that we would really love to encourage people to come out and continue cultural practices in this area. So I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about the uplands now. In 2015, there was a forest inventory took place as part of the plan development, and components of this, such as the age of trees, density of stems, and size, all went into considering how to prioritize these forest stands for management. So you can see there's a large range in age, 15 to over 50 years, and that's largely a component of this eastern section here in the green and yellow that was designated part of the reserve in 1974, and the western section was later acquired, and that forest is a lot younger, denser, smaller trees. And so there's around 290 acres of mid and high priority areas, which are in that red and orange zone. So the desired outcome of our management that we're looking to do in this area is to reintroduce the variability associated with old growth forests and really improve on that habitat, improve on the abiotic and biotic conditions. So the characteristics that influence, fire moving through the system and also wildlife using the system. So the prescription that we're looking to use in this area is called a variable density thinning prescription. And this is designed to really focus on introducing variability into it, which is a key characteristic of old growth conditions. So what this prescription utilizes is various areas where none of the trees are removed, and that's here designated as skips. And then areas that all of the trees are removed, and this is designated as gaps. And the idea of this is to break up that continuous fuel layer and that continuous forest, and also provide opportunities for new species to come in and plantings in those areas. It's also used in wildlife corridors and being able to access different conditions within the forest. And then between these skips and gaps is a thinning matrix where we're bringing those really dense stands up to 300 trees per acre down to 150 trees per acre. And then planting of species that are rare or are uncommon in the area, such as western red cedar in wetter areas. And we're looking to also put in the Port Orford cedar root rot resistant variety so that we can replace some of those Port Orford cedars that we're losing from the reserve We're also hoping to trial planting bear grass in some of these gaps and really trying to do a few tests, I guess, too, about what we can introduce in there in terms of culturally significant plants. Also leaving larger snags as part of the prescription and following up with additional thinning in 15 to 20 years time. So this is a lot of trees that are going to be coming down as part of this thinning process. And so the South Slough cannot sell its trees. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what we anticipate happening with those, that material. So one component is that we will be using some of this material down in those lowlands in the restoration projects so that we can have large woody debris in there for habitat quality. Also looking to expand on our Sitka spruce tidal swamp area, which is a great area in the reserve, and we're hoping to expand that site by creating these nurse cribs and planting shrubs and trees on those in the tidal areas. Also using smaller stems for beaver dam analogues as part of the lowlands restoration, and then looking into creating biochar, and that's been shown to be quite useful in restoration projects as well. And then some of the wood will be left in the uplands for habitat and for nutrient cycling. So looking to lop and scatter, so not having continuous areas of fuel on the ground, habitat piles where logs are stacked on top of each other. This will stop fires from sort of moving through continuous fuels on the ground and allow wildlife to use these areas as well. And then having small slash piles. So the things that will go into the decisions about where the wood's going, in what areas, are really driven by fire risk, as well as habitat value and nutrient cycling, concerns with moisture retention, and also the use of that material in aspects such as the lowlands restoration work. So a lot of thought is going into where this wood is going and in what sections it's going to take that form. And then the final possibility is removing from the site as part of stewardship contracting. And this is something that's sort of new and we're exploring within the reserve. It's not something that's been done before. And so that's more of a discussion about whether or not that's feasible. Then as part of the research reserve system, it's our duty to look at these restoration projects and see how they're going and conduct research in the forests in this area. And so a component of this would be installing permanent plots, which I'm looking to go out and do this summer, and really focusing on those skips, gaps, and thinned areas so we can see what's going on in all the different prescription areas, and then tying in these to reserve-wide monitoring. So in 2011, 5 plots were established within the reserve, and we're also looking to expand this network so that we can see how the restoration actions in the forest are really tying comparable to the rest of the forest within South Slough, and then also outside of South Slough at our reference site at Cummins Creek and other areas along the Pacific Northwest that we're trying to tie our research into. And just a quick note on funding. So as Bree said, US Fish and Wildlife Service has kindly provided us with over $64,000 to start in the uplands. However, our estimate is that this, is only going to cover about a quarter of the high priority areas. And so it's kind of like a trial run to see how far the money is going to stretch with this type of prescriptions that's not entirely commonly done in this area. And we'll have a sort of better idea about how much acreage we can do per dollar value. and then potential other fundings for specifically for lowlands or for the construction of the trail system and uplands. We're looking to, it would be great to fund it all as one wonderful project that looks at ridgetop to estuary, but in reality, we might be sort of breaking it down and doing it in components with different grants for different focus areas. So the next step is, after hopefully the commission approves it, we'll be looking to conduct a lot of outreach and build community support for this work, and then start implementing the upland forest management and seeking additional funding. And I should put in here that also we're currently revising that lowlands portion of the plan and then bringing that to the commission as well. And that's it from me. So I'd love to hear thoughts and questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen as well.
Thank you, Alice. That I told you all that would be a great presentation. I really enjoyed reading through it last night, and you know, it's really too bad our land got like that, and it's going to take a lot of work to put it back together. But it's clear there's been a lot of time spent on putting this plan together, and I'm glad we're at a point where we can move forward. I had a couple of questions, and then I want to open it up to others. In the lowlands where you're going to, or the, is it in the lowlands or the uplands where you're going to, you talked about greater opportunity for cultural uses. Will you be planting camas in the meadows there? Because that sounds like a perfect place to plant.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're talking about and trying to find the right location. And during my, you'll be so sick of hearing from me today, but during my stewardship report out, I was going to talk about the camas trial that we are running at Indian Point. And I think it's something that we're looking into, and I'm not sure about suitability of the sites, but it's definitely on the list.
Okay, that's awesome. And I know the chief would appreciate that. The tribes really are, camas is not only a source of food, but it's also a cultural practice that they participate in. So that would be great. The other question I had was about the variable density thinning. I love that diagram from the U.S. Forest Service. So is that something that you is a standard practice in forestry, and that you're adopting that?
Well, so we're aiming for old growth conditions, and so I guess it depends on the practice and the desired outcome for forestry in the area. There is definitely examples on the Pacific Northwest that have been successful in this, and I might put it in the chat box link, because I found a great site to the Olympic Peninsula. They have a wonderful virtual tour of their variable density thinning projects up there, and yeah, I was awe-inspired by their website, because you can really walk through and see the great work and the great outcomes that they've had using this method.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so that leads me to another question. I only have two more. The biochar, is that, that's fabulous. I love that we're going to utilize that. Are you going to include that in a carbon sequestration model?
I think that would be a great idea. It's not something that I specifically have plans for, but we have, you know, people working at the reserve on carbon sequestration and blue carbon specifically. So I think that would be a wonderful thing to include, but I don't have current plans.
Okay, because there's a lot of talk about carbon. And so the final question is, you may know that the Elliott State Forest, our large 83,000 acre forest nearby, we've been working on for the last 2 years trying to cut a deal with Oregon State University to make that a research forest. Carbon is a part of that project. But the other point I wanted to make, and I'm going to make this to the advisory committee of the Elliott because Oregon State seems to want to bite off the entire chunk and do everything all at once, the giant research forest. I'm more about doing it in stages as the money is available and we don't get in over our skis. And so your last comment about likely needing to do this in components to pay for it, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, because as you do it and show success, you move forward and more funding opens up. And because this is a big project. So it's going to take some time to do. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I'm going to take that back to the Elliott State Forest Advisory Committee as an example of how to get things done. So those are my questions. I really, really appreciate your presentation today. I'll open it up and see if anyone else has any questions. I don't see any hands raised, but if you have a question, just unmute and go for it. Chief, I see you right in my screen next to me. Do you want to talk about the camas a bit?
Yes, I live here in the valley, and I have canvas all over the place here. And if there's a need for bulbs, I'm more than willing to help dig them and get them to you.
That's wonderful.
And
that's a great idea.
I don't know if this valley one is the one that grows at the coast that well or not. I know we've Doc and I have tried some, but not had too good a success. But he's got some that's growing, but I don't know if it's that well suited for the coast. And the other thing on the wood, the thinning, how much wood is there going to be? A lot of the elders still burn wood for heating purposes, and wood sometimes is kind of hard to access. I was wondering if there would be any excess of the wood when you're thinning that could be donated to the tribe let the tribe come out and get it.
Yeah, and I've spoken to a few people from Coquel and CT Clusie about that. The only issue is that a lot of it is going to be Doug fir that we're focusing on removing. I know there was interest in if we were taking out any western red cedar to come out and strip the bark before we took that down, but it is really quite rare in this watershed, and so we're really looking to not take out those rarer species if we can help it. But it's definitely something that's on the list of people to reach out to if that situation comes up. And definitely if you're interested in other species, I know there's areas of Sitka spruce that will be prioritizing that species. And so if there's anything else that the tribes would like, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. And yeah, that's I really commend the South Slough staff. They do their due diligence and make sure the tribes have an opportunity for input and to see if any of those things can be utilized. So that would be great. I see Maya has her hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. That was a great presentation, Alice. Thank you. So when you say stewardship contracting as far as removal, what would that be? Like, what would be an example?
So it's trade for services, trade the logs for services. Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So they wouldn't make a profit out of it, but it would offset some of the costs.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, great. I saw Dave's hand went up and then it went down. Dave?
Yeah, I had a question about the carbon sequestration aspect of this. It appears to me that when we do the thinning that we're getting to create more growth. And I believe that would create a situation where the forest will absorb more carbon. I wonder if there's a way or a study to find out how that might be affected.
Yeah, there's definitely some research out there that's looking at this. Because we are taking down some trees and those trees are not sequestering carbon, then it has been shown that that offset in terms of growth is somewhat imbalance, or there's a little bit of discrepancy between the carbon sequestration for that. And that's why we're hoping to take some of that wood and turn it into biochar that will lock up that carbon. So at least we're not releasing it into the atmosphere as well. But again, I encourage anyone with research interests that are, looking to do carbon sequestration or any sort of forest research around this project to really get in touch with me, because I think it's a great opportunity that we're right at the beginning of, to be really asking these questions now. Is a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. And I really want us to make an effort to find out if there's anyone who wants to tag along on that research on carbon. So I'll provide that information to the staff and see if anything comes to mind with anyone. But definitely, we should actually talk to our comms people if the commission approves this project today. And we can do a press release and talk about it, and also put some information about that in there. So that'll be good. Okay, any other questions or comments from members? Bree?
I just wanted to note that we have a member of the advisory team who's joined us. So John Schaefer, if you are interested in introducing yourself. I'm not sure if folks saw you join us, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to say hello.
Hi, I'm John Schaefer, the biologist for the Confederated Tribes, the Kusla, Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians. And I'm very interested in this Wasson project, and hopefully influence some of the plants that are going to be restored.
Great, John. I know you're an expert in this field, so that's terrific that you want to be involved. I'm looking forward to it. This is a really exciting project. I got goosebumps about it.
So I do have on page 11 of your packet is the staff recommendation that the South Slough Reserve recommends the commission authorize staff to begin implementing the Wasson Uplands Restoration Plan with funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service administered through the Friends of South Slough, and to seek additional funding for implementing the full plan.
So that would be a motion. Do I have a motion? And you can just say, yeah, what she said, but you can be a little motion. All right, Chief's motion would be the recommendation as just read by the reserve manager, Bree Hednock. Would that be correct, Chief?
Correct.
All right, and is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Great, Maya gave a second. All right, any discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hearing no opposition, the motion passes unanimously. I'm so excited. Work with comms and we'll see how we can get this project rolling. Since it's been ready since, what, 2015, you said? I wrote my notes. It's been a while. It's been percolating a while, so it's nice to get it moving. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we're going to hear from Alice again, as well as Deborah. Let me get back to my agenda. We're going to hear about the pampas grass removal project. So I don't know which of you is going to take the lead on that conversation, but go for it.
That would be me. I told you you're going to get sick of me by the end of this meeting here. Let me see if I can share my screen again. Now, are you seeing my correct screen or my note screen?
Your notes.
Sorry, what was that?
The notes.
Okay.
But it did say no notes.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Perfect.
I find it frustrating because it doesn't put a little box around it to show me which screen I'm sharing. So,
Yeah, you're
but-
not the only one that has that problem. I've seen other people when they go to share, they're not sure which one they're clicking on. I think that might have happened to John during a presentation, but I could be
So I'm going
wrong.
to start off this presentation, and then Deborah's going to come on, and I'll just progress the slides for her, and so we don't sort of switch over halfway through, and hopefully that works out well. So this presentation is sort of an update, I guess, on some work that we have done at the reserve this year since our last commission, and it's on raising awareness around Pampas grass removal. You can see Pampas grass here in the pictures before and after. So just to give you a little bit of background on this, since we're switching gears here, Pampas grass impacts coastal ecosystems as well as properties along the coast. You can see that there's a lot of biomass, a lot of material here. I'm hiding in this photo right at the back. The plant itself puts up these spikes with big flowering heads on it, which is part of, I think, the reason why it's so popular in the landscape trade, and it was brought in for that reason and then escaped, and then these turn into seeds and spread throughout our natural areas. There's actually 2 species of Pampas grass in this area, and this becomes a little confusing for some people because one of them is primarily female plants that don't reproduce and spread as quickly as the other species, which is both male and female, or it can reproduce by itself and spread throughout the area. And so there's some sort of contention on, well, I've got the one that doesn't spread, but the reality is that this is a species of concern in this area, and BLM has designated it as a species that we need to be managing. So I just mentioned, I guess, is that it's used as sort of decoration as well as landscaping, but it can pose a high fire risk within people's properties. And that's one of the reasons that we really focused on this species for management. And then I already mentioned it's wind dispersed seeds. And so these plants in neighboring properties spreading into the reserve and causing large scale problems. And then also we want to manage it so that those seeds that are inside the reserve aren't spreading out to other neighboring properties. So South Slough had a large population and then 2 smaller populations within the reserve system. And past attempts had failed because the attempts were made during the summertime when the ground was hard and it was hard to dig out these really large plants. And so there's been quite a long time where we're sort of aware of it and really wanting to get rid of it, but that's been not really possible. So then in January this year, we undertook a large removal effort. First of all, we worked with the tribal historic preservation officers from both Kaquel Indian tribe, Confederated tribes of the Siletz Indians, and Confederated tribes of the Kuzlaw, Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians to make sure that these removal efforts weren't inadvertently impacting any cultural resources in the area. We did find in one area that there was a concern, and so we adapted our management strategy so that we didn't disturb the soil in that area. And then we coordinated with the Coos Forest Protective Association to actually do all the heavy lifting and digging. There was a lot of shovels that were broken and chainsaws that needed to be sharpened by the end of this project. There's about 650 person hours that went into the removal project. We removed around 140 cubic yards of Pampas grass, which equated to over 5,000 plants by our estimates. And so a few tips and tricks, definitely remove in the spring because the soil is loose and you can dig it up. during this time, it also means that you're not spreading that seed around because all of the seed is already dropped. We were using chainsaws to cut off the tops and then digging out the base. And this seemed to be a pretty effective way with our crews. However, some of the plants that were easily accessible, wrapping a chain around at the base and winching them out was also pretty successful. But if you can't remove these really large plants, then going out in the autumn before they set seed, when the flowers have formed, and cutting off those top spikes, at least this will stop it from spreading into natural areas and other areas. So Deborah's going to talk about our communications campaign that followed this effort of removal.
Okay. Thanks, Alice. So as you can see, our communications team, of course, is made up of Alice as the beginning contributor of all this excellent material to share to the public. Leanne O'Neill, our DSL communications officer, was instrumental in guiding us in the steps that it took to create this outreach for our community. And myself, I'm the Reserve Public Involvement Coordinator. So the team of three worked together. Next slide, please. And we first identified our goals and who our target audiences were. So obviously, part of the point of this was to raise awareness so that people could manage this pampas grass and know how to remove it, and to encourage people to remove it and maybe not purchase it to begin with. And also just to get people to volunteer as stewards to help the reserve control not just pampas grass, but other invasive plants. So that meant that our target audiences were the Southern Oregon coast residents. Then we specifically reached out to local journalists and news outlets, especially those that focus on gardening and backyard landscaping and those sorts of things. And of course, our regular South Slough Reserve patrons. Next slide, please. So then we identified what our key messages were going to be. And what our calls to action were going to be. So we identified the problem, which is the pampas grass, how the seed spreads. We shared information on how to identify and address it. And then we also did a little information piece about all this work that Alice just presented that we did at the reserve. Next slide. So the communication team outlined their target audiences and goals, and then filtered those into different ways of doing outreach. So some of the key messages we put into social media. Some of them we focused into what's called earned media, where we did formal press releases, and then we specifically communicated with some local media outlets to see if they were interested in picking up the story. Back to the social media, some of the channels that we used, we did some posts, which is what you're seeing here in front of you is an Instagram post. We did some Twitter tweets, we did Facebook posts, and we did YouTube video. So the beginning video that you saw on a few slides back, we had a before and after with some music. And then there's another YouTube video that shows when the pampas grass is small, how to actually pull it out and remove it. So those are on our YouTube page. And so these posts basically were to kind of catch people's interest and just to kind of highlight the work and also provide links to more information for people. We had flyers. And then we also, on our upcoming newsletter, will be highlighting this project as well as what people can do to remove some of these invasive plants, as well as to help the reserve with other invasive plant control. Next slide, please. Some of the outcomes of this is KCBY did an interview with Alice at the People at Noon, and there's hyperlinks to all of these. So if at any point we want to look at those, we can. KCBY also did an article on their webpage, and there's a hyperlink there. And then the World Newspaper did an article on asking homeowners to remove pampas grass, and I believe that was in kind of their garden, like family section of the paper. And then our social media, our Instagram post had 85 people view it with 1 comment. The second post we did had 131 views with 6 comments. Our Twitter tweets had 85 views with 2 engagements, which is similar to comments. Facebook, the original post that we created had reached 111 people, had 6 clicks and 3 reactions. The shared KCBY Facebook post from the article above reached an additional 477 people with 51 engagements. And that's what you're seeing to the left of the screen is an actual engagement from someone who visited that post and wanted to know more about the project. And the YouTube videos had 23 views for the first one, and the second one had 19 views. Our YouTube channel is pretty young in the sense that we don't have a lot of followers yet, so that doesn't surprise me that there's not a ton of views for that. And last but not least, future initiatives. So we'll work periodically with Alice to engage the public with other invasive species and stewardship projects. So our next big campaign will be May 15th through 22nd because it's Invasive Species Outreach Week. And also the American Hiking Society on June 5th is having a Trails Day. And so we will be having an information session on how to be a South Slough Trail Steward on May 20th. And then on June 5th, we'll have some active on the ground weed pull training for these individuals. And that's all I really had, other than I really want to say that Alice did a great job. She provided the communications team with some really well documented notes, as well as photographs and some film that we were able to take and create this campaign with. So we had a lot of good material. Alice was accessible for when we had questions. Since she's the scientist and we're the communications, we did have a lot of specific questions to ask to make sure we were communicating this appropriately. So I do want to say kudos to both Alice and to Leanne for organizing our thoughts and our process. This whole thing took about 3 weeks. So if any other staff or other people would like a campaign done, just keep in mind that that's about how long it takes to do a large campaign like this. And that's all I had, unless anyone had questions.
Thank you both, Deborah and Alice. This was a great project, and I was surprised all the media that picked up on it, which was terrific. I had 2 questions, and I think I brought them up with Leanne when you were involved in the project early on. Did you all reach out to the Invasive Species Council?
Yes, yeah, we did.
Okay, you're nodding your head. Okay, because they know how to do all that outreach too. And I had suggested that to Leanne. And then while you were talking, I was thinking maybe the soil and water conservation districts can be another source of outreach.
Good point.
I hadn't thought about that until you were showing all these pictures of where these are. And I bet that would be great.
And I should also note that we did work with Coos Watershed Association, and they put in some posts around this time as well on Pampers grass and linked us with that as part of their campaign.
Awesome. Well, this was just a terrific campaign, and I love the coordination with the state office and the in Salem with the South Slough, and the comms team just really did a great job. Makes a difference when you can tell your story, doesn't it? All right, I see Christine's hand is up and Bree's hand is up. So we'll go with Christine first.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up. I am a member of the Invasive Species Council, and we have not done the best job of, and I'm representing Friends of South Slough, but we're still working on how to appropriately communicate some of this information. In our, and I was going to mention this in our FOSS report, but essentially we are having a webinar during the second phase of Invasive Species Awareness Month, and that's going to be on the 18th. And I'm hoping that the staff can, at least some of the staff can participate in that webinar and be part of some of the outreach that we're doing. Certainly your folks at DSL did a great job of forwarding the green crab work. And I got that to the council and also to the coastal committee of the the Western Regional Panel, which I also serve on. So, but I think we really need to work more on some of those communication networks. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Yeah, Christine, I know that one of the sad parts of the Invasive Species Council is adequate funding to do what they need to do. And they're always wanting to find some more secure source for funding. And the various natural resource agencies in a cabinet meeting actually had conversations about how can we put money in to fund the work they do, because it's really good. So I was not aware that was another one of your great volunteer activities. So thank you for that. Bree.
Thanks. I just wanted to note, I'm not sure if everybody saw on Deborah's slide with the outcomes, that post was somebody who had actually removed pampas grass from their yard. And so I thought that was really cool that the campaign resulted in people actually, you know, doing some actions and making a difference. So I thought that was a neat thing to highlight.
That's great. I remember when I was in the legislature, the Department of Agriculture was presenting in their budget, and one of the things they talked about was that butterfly bush, and that it was an invasive species. So I said, but I bought mine at a nursery, and I did. So I went home that weekend, and my husband and I took out our butterfly bush. And so whenever I see it on a walk, and if someone's outside of their house, I let them kindly know, do you know that that's an invasive species? Even though it attracts butterflies, there are other plants you could plant. So there you go. All right, any other great comments or questions? Love the participation today. Thank you. And thank you, Alice and Deborah. We're going to move on to our information reports, which have lots of great stuff. You know, despite COVID, for almost about 18 months now, the folks at the South Slough have been able to do their work and continue their education and outreach. It's had to slow down a little bit during the heavy part of COVID, but I am anxious for the Management Commission to hear from the team about how things are going. So we'll start out with the Administration and Facilities report. I suspect that will be Rebecca that gives that, Bree.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, Vicki.
Good.
The majority of my updates were in the reports, but there's a couple things I wanted to highlight. One of the things, like Vicki said, COVID has definitely impacted our facilities quite a bit. But I want to highlight during the last year and a half, 18 months, whatever it's been now, it seems like it's been forever. But during this time, we have still had staff, you know, on site doing what needed to be done to keep our facilities open. There's 4 people I would like to kind of highlight here that are my staff that I manage. And Kathy and Patrick. Kathy is on our call here. Patrick is our procurement and contracts person on site. Both of them have been in the office every day during the closures, you know, holding down the fort at our visitor center, answering phones, keeping things moving on that end. The other 2 staff that have been on site daily as well has been my facility staff, which is Mike Allman, who's our facilities supervisor, and then also Jonathan Forth, who's our park ranger assistant. They have been on site daily as well, keeping our facilities running, cleaning restrooms so that we can keep those open to the public during the closures, and then also keeping all of our facility projects moving along. The 4 of those staff have really, like I said, been holding down the fort for at least the visitor center. The other things I wanted to kind of highlight real quick, and like I said, the main explanations are in the reports, but I think the biggest thing that our facilities guys have been dealing with over the last year or so has been all of our construction awards that we have currently going with NOAA. So we have our FY19 grant, which covered expansion of our maintenance compound. We're still working on trying to get that one finished up. Construction has been moving slow because of COVID. Getting permits and whatnot has definitely been delayed, but we're moving forward. The siding on our main maintenance building, it should be starting here shortly. We're getting hardy plank installed on our building, so it's more environmentally friendly, as well as a better fireproof barrier for our building. And also a new pole barn will be built hopefully by the end of this year for storage of all of our paddle craft. So that project is moving forward. The other trails project that we have is also a NOAA funded grant. And just recently, we've had quite a few projects going on. So it was noticed over the winter time that our Hidden Creek 9 bridge was failing. And my maintenance staff, they went out and did a temporary fix until we could contract to have a bridge built. We ended up deciding on doing a full aluminum bridge for a couple different reasons. One, long-term maintenance of it. The wood in our area, especially down the Hidden Creek drainage, nothing ever dries out. So it's always that damp environment, and the wood would always be slippery when wet, you know, things like that. So we ended up going with a full aluminum construction bridge. This was a 16-foot long bridge. And we contracted with a local business to build that for us. And during that build, staff went back and forth on what our requirements were, what our needs were. It needed to be fully, because it is a suspension bridge. And so we needed safety first. We needed, you know, a non-slip walkway so that we didn't have that risk of our customers and people using the trails to slip and fall into the creek, things like that. And we actually ended up working with Coos Forest Patrol again just recently. I believe it was last week or the week before, to get that 16-foot bridge installed. So we used Coos Forest Patrol inmate crews to come in. We dismantled the old wooden bridge, and the crew actually packed this 16-foot long bridge all the way down to the area and had it installed. We originally were looking at a week or more to do this project. They dismantled and installed the bridge in one day. It was a massive amount of work, but they did it in such a quick way that they made easy work of it. So another way that we use our Coos Forest Patrol partner, as well as our you know, Shutters Creek inmates for work at the reserve. Another great successful project for us. And I think that was pretty much all I wanted to highlight today out of the facility stuff. Bree, did you have any admin to add?
I guess the only thing, it's in the packet, but just to make sure folks saw it, is that we were awarded the $500,000 grant to make improvements to our visitor center for accessibility, as well as renovating the restrooms to make them fully ADA accessible and gender neutral.
Yeah, that was great. So be sure to read more deeply in the reports. We're just hitting the highlights at our meeting today. I am wondering, Rebecca, what we're going to do when Shutter Creek closes and we no longer have inmates available.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a worry that I have because we use them on a lot of different projects, including our research projects. We've got a project coming up that Jenny Schmidt will be assisting with, as well as Allie Helms, that are going to need inmates to pack, materials down into some of the harder reach areas of the reserve to put in place. And without those type of crews, it's going to be really hard on some of these more labor intensive projects that we have going on. I have talked with Coos Forest Patrol about this issue, and they have still offered, because we have a ongoing MOU with them, and they said once Shutters Creek is closed, we would still have access to their firefighting crews, but it wouldn't be like 10 people at a time. It might be 3 to 4 people at a time. So less than half of what the current capacity is. So at least we still have that option, but it's definitely going to be a huge hit to our labor needs.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it until you were talking about it. And I know that's on the cut list and the closure list.
It is, and we're actually trying to work through our long list of projects right now that we really need to get done with inmates and try and get them scheduled this year before they close.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what the closure date is because they have to wind down on that, but
yeah. From what we've heard, it's around the first part of 2022, but that could change. We don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll be sure to let the governor know that's one of the consequences of closing the prison. But there are lots of reasons that went into decision for closure, but just some of the consequences in rural areas is that inmate labor has been used. Okay, any questions, comments? Great, hearing none, we'll move on to the education report.
That's me. It is all in your packet. I think probably one of the most exciting things for us is that we are starting to transition a little bit back toward what we
love to do.
Traditionally do, what we love to do. Yeah, we've certainly spent a lot of time on, like all of you guys, on our screens, and we have started visiting schools and providing some outdoor lessons for cohorts. And we have students scheduled to come out to the reserve in May. So I think as an education staff, we're really excited about that because it's sort of our why we do what we do. We're also starting to put our summer schedule together, and it's looking like it will be busy and it will have lots of good in-person opportunities. So we're excited about that. I have the one thing I wanted to highlight is in your packet, which is just a video that our seasonal education specialist, Daniel, made. So the link is in there if you all want to watch it. It's like a 4-minute long video, and teachers have been using it to talk about estuaries and watersheds, and we think it has a pretty good long life as a pre-lesson for students who come out to the reserve. So we're excited about that video. And the other things I was going to mention were like Bree said, the PAC award that we got funded for accessibility is going to let us start doing some updates to our exhibit hall. And we're really excited to make those changes there, to make those exhibits a little bit more inclusive and just updated because they're getting a little old. And the final thing I wanted to mention was that we did get approved to be a host site for an AmeriCorps person for this coming cycle. So they would start in September. We have to recruit them ourselves and work on the match a little bit, but we may have an AmeriCorps person with us starting in September for about 11 months. And the project the AmeriCorps person will work on, what we're aiming for is for them to restart or restructure our after school programming, which is something we haven't been able to do for the last 3 or 4 years. So we're going to have them work on that, and hopefully that will get our reach into communities that can't always make it out to the reserve. You guys know that it's not exactly the easiest place to reach. So yeah, we're excited about all those things, I think. And that's what I got.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm confident you are excited about it. All of us are excited about being able to get out and be in the world again now that vaccines are available. So I know it's been especially hard on you and the education staff because you like being with the kiddos. That's the fun part of your job. So anyone else have any other comments or questions about this report? And do be sure to watch Daniel's video. Daniel does such a great job with that. So thank you, Daniel. All right, we'll move on to the coastal training information report. Thank you, Jamie.
Hey, so I'm going to be focusing mostly on workshops. So we held the Introduction to Cultural Resources hosted by Cassandra Ripier and Stacy Scott to interested persons at DSL. It was the announcement was trying to cater to folks at DSL that either had ground disturbance activities, responsibilities, or those that oversaw such projects. And there was a lot of questions after the presentation, so that went really well, including in unclaimed properties, actually asked for a more specific follow-up training, which is going to happen in May. That is going to go over cultural resources, the breadth of what that might constitute, as well as if they come across any sort of those artifacts or resources, the best way to, where they should go, who they should contact, etc. Just trying to do, updated, best practices. There's also going to be next week, there's going to be a tips and tools for facilitating virtual meetings. That's a public facing event. So we have some local folks, I'd say about 80% of the folks registered so far are local facing, and then we have some from more farther abroad because it's a digital coast event. And then in June, we are putting together a fire management and defensible space workshop. And we're working with that. It was initially going to have an in-person component. We're partnering with OSU OSU Extension Fire Management Branch, which is fairly new. And they have some restrictions around that. So we're scaling it back to a virtual webinar, but we're putting together some speakers that we can record beforehand, walking around the reserve, talking about the treatment areas, and incorporating that into the webinar. So kind of trying to do a virtual site visit into the webinar. And hopefully out of that, there was some discussions of making some longer term products such as videos or an audio tour. We're still working through that. But those longer term products might become a future tool for the CTP program. And then as the chair of the South Slough Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, just a couple of quick updates. One, we are meeting more regularly. We're kind of we got our roadmap figured out. We've got a project list that we are going through. And one of the big ones is we've conducted 2 of the 3 tribal consultation interviews for our land acknowledgement policy practice that we're trying to put together. After we've been able to talk with the 3rd tribe, then we'll be trying to draft something and do a follow-up training with South Slough staff. We just want to make sure that as we're going about talking about how to do land acknowledgements, that we do it with thorough communication with our nearby tribes. and make sure that it is, you know, a long-standing and respective process. And then myself and a couple other South Slough staff are being asked to join various NARES national level diversity, equity, and inclusion groups. There's a lot of different efforts going different levels. So we're bringing those discussions and brainstormings back to the committee so that we can, you know, keep resources going and bringing the national conversations down to our site on a regular basis. And that's it for my update.
A lot going on, Sabra. Nice work.
Thank
I'm
you.
impressed. And I know my staff really enjoyed, our staff enjoyed the presentation on cultural resources. And I'm glad to see the unclaimed property section will be getting some education on that as well, because that came up over a year ago, I think, with the advisory committee that the governor has on protection of cultural resources. So that's great. All of this is wonderful. Okay, any other questions or comments? See, we have such good stuff going on. This is terrific. All right, we're going to hear from the science folks now. So we'll turn it over.
All right, thanks. Good morning. Today, I'd just like to talk a bit about a project. So the Reserve System has a Margaret A. Davidson Fellowship Program. And our Margaret A. Davidson Fellow, Taylor Dodrill, just started with us last week with her sampling. And so just a few things that I was thinking about. I know most of this information is in your packet, but often you're not able to make sort of the connections or see how things are connected together. So this is an interesting case study, I think, of that, of how we use some information, and we also have lots of partners that help with these projects. So first, Taylor and I went kayaking to pick up some of her samples out in the estuary, and she mentioned one of the things she needs for her work are good long-term water quality data sets. And she mentioned that she was looking at ours and she was amazed at how well the quality of the information that we have in our data. She's worked at data from other places like the Columbia River, and often there's big chunks of data missing here and there, or the data will go from one group to another group and they'll miss data, or they'll change the station or various things. So she was really amazed just at how the high quality of our data collection. So just want to give kudos to Allie and Adam, who are doing that data collection. It really shows how important it is to have the quality assurance of our central data management office and that process for data acquisition. Also, a few weeks ago, Michelle Woods, who is a professor at University of Oregon, she was interested in finding a new home for her immunoassay equipment, which I don't know if you know about harmful algal blooms, but harmful algal blooms occur and there's a toxicity involved. And in marine systems, it's mostly domoic acid and saxitoxin. And she actually had an instrument that she was looking to find a home for that does that will be able to analyze for those toxins. And I sent it off to Taylor, and Taylor said, yes, that's exactly what I need. And so we actually had a process by which we moved that equipment to OIMB. And thanks for Maya for her support, as well as we're putting in Alan Shanks's lab. So a previous commission member, Alan Shanks, agreed to put it in his lab for work for this summer, especially. Under COVID-19, we wanted to sort of spread out our lab a bit. And so that was really helpful to be able to put in that lab. So also as part of this project, even though it's a reserve project, we're also partnering with CT Clusi. I know I see John on here. And so she's also working with HABs in some CT Clusi sites like 10 Mile Lakes and Fossil Point. And so I just wanted to bring that up as an example about how we have all these different partnerships. In addition, George von Dassau, a professor at OIMB, is allowing Taylor to use his environmental chamber to do experiments. And Taylor's from PSU. So here we have a connection between Oregon State University, Portland State University, OIMB, the tribes, and ourselves, all working together to better understand the effect of harmful algal blooms. And we may even be able to use this equipment later after she finishes. We might still be able to use that equipment to look for domoic acid and saxitoxin in these shellfish that we use for cultural resources and for recreational harvesting. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I think everything else is in there, but I just thought that was an interesting case study of how we're integrated with both research and with community.
Oh, and that's great that you shared that, Sean. I think that's terrific. And the interesting thing is we are working on a project in the Ross Island Slough area, in the Portland area on harmful algal blooms. And we've been working with Oregon State University, and they've been doing some research for us, their graduate students. So I love it when we can collaborate and use all these different folks and abilities. That's just terrific. And I'm glad that OIMB is a really good partner as well.
And I'd also like to point out that a key component of this is the hydrologic model that Jenny has been working on for many years with Dave Sutherland at University of Oregon. So when I was talking with Taylor, she also said, I could really use understanding of water movement for HABs. And I was like, we have that. So here's the contact to Dave Sutherland. So it shows how all the projects that we're working on are actually being used to further other projects by other people and other groups that have use for the community.
Well, and I'm sure Chris Wall is excited to be hearing all of that, because that's exactly what NOAA's hoping for with the reserves. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Absolutely. And it's also just great to hear how this fellowship is already helping make some of these great connections and get some of this work done. So it's a new program, and I'm excited to hear this perspective on it.
Good. Well, see, we're going to make your A list again this year for our NERS. Plus, my my conversation with Bree some months ago indicated that you had an opportunity to meet our governor. Did you not, Chris?
It was Bree Turner.
Oh, it was Bree. It was Bree, the other Bree.
I heard about that, and she was excited for the conversation she had. So that was a great opportunity.
Yeah, because our governor actually knows a lot about what South Slough is doing and what's going on there, because we're doing such a good job of educating her and the landlords. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sean. Once again, you guys are shining. Let's hear from our stewardship coordinator.
Oh, sorry, Chair Walker, I just wanted to point out there's been some chat about this. I want to make sure Allie made a great comment that Taylor has also worked with Jamie to develop a NERS mystery data lesson on harmful algal blooms with the water quality data. So Jamie mentioned that's a great lesson, and I think teachers are starting to use that. So I want to make sure that comment was seen.
Oh, yeah, I often skip the comments because I'm busy managing the meeting and I don't see them all the time. So that's terrific. Oh my gosh. All right, good job. Yay. See, it's so exciting. Okay, how about stewardship?
Well, I've already given you quite a lot of detail about stewardship this time, talking about restoration as well as invasive species. I guess a couple of things I just wanted to note. Kiri actually sent me a message saying that the forest vegetation simulator that was one of the slides does actually model carbon storage releases in stand treatments. And so that is something that we can easily do with that modeling software. So I just wanted to follow up on that comment that you had, Vicky.
Oh, good.
Two other things that I just wanted to mention. I think Deborah touched on it. We're starting to look into developing a Trails Steward program where we get volunteers to come and help out with our trails. And so we're looking to have a multi-tiered approach to this. So have some basic training for people who are interested in just being out there on our trails, being a welcoming presence, being a friendly face, positive connections with South Slough, with visitors, and picking up trash, dog waste, pulling invasive species along the trails. So that's something that we're encouraging people to get involved with if they already hike our trails or access our trails. And then another tier of having people join us on maintenance days where there's a little bit more heavy lifting, a little bit more intensive work. So we're starting to get that organized now, and I'm hoping that that takes some of the pressure off Jonathan, who does an excellent job maintaining our trails, and also give the people that are out there an opportunity to really sort of make those trails great and keep them wonderful and nice for everyone. Then the last thing I just wanted to talk about was our Camas Trail down at Indian Point off of Crown Point Road. This was briefly mentioned at the last commission meeting, where I had just put the plants in the ground the week before the commission meeting. And John Schaefer donated around 170 bulbs for that trial, and we were looking at whether or not this meadow out at Indian Point would be a suitable location for a camas meadow. There was some concern about heavy deer browsing in that area, and so we wanted to put a trial in to see if that was the case or if we could establish it. It does look like there's definitely deer browsing going on, and perhaps some yellowing, potentially due to the nutrient levels in the soil. And so I haven't got the final results from that study yet, and I'll definitely share that out with everyone once I do. At the moment, they are coming up, and there are some that are looking beautiful and some flower buds starting to come on, but definitely some deer browsing. So I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be the best site at the reserve, and so we'll continue to look for other areas in the reserve that might be suitable. And I think you've heard enough from me this morning, so I'll finish up on the stewardship there, unless we have questions.
Let's see, am I muted? Nope. Well, thank you. And thank you, John, for donating those bulbs. This is exciting. This is work that you enjoy and Alice enjoys. So it's really a terrific opportunity to have this happen at the South Slough. Any other comments? Thank you for all your time today, Alice. I really appreciate your work. We all do. It's
You're
just
welcome. Thanks, Vicky.
And now we're going to hear from those wonderful friends of South Slough who really are invested in the work that we do here. So I don't know if it's Todd or Christine or both of you, but I'll turn the mic over to you.
Go with the El Presidente.
Well, you're not off the hook entirely, Todd.
Damn it.
It's a pleasure to join your meeting today, and as you know, our mission is to support everything that's going on that you've been listening to. But one of the unique things that we can do as an NGO is that we can apply for grants that and make things possible. So we have been working hard to do that. And but I just want to, I know that Vicky likes to put in some of these personal stories. So our FOSS board is kind of a small group, and we're needing to have a little more strength just to be worker bees. But we went through a significant change in the board, particularly related to the COVID closure of the gift shop, because the bookstore there was sort of what people thought FOSS was, and that really wasn't all that FOSS was and could be. So we've really done a strategic redesign, and you know, some of that has actually benefited by the COVID closure, where we could focus on reaching out and supporting financially and communicating better to the rest of the world, the amazing things here. So you know, it was my choice to retire to the South Coast because I had early beginnings in my professional career at OIMB back in the late 60s. So I just, this is a special place. And I'm thinking about this in the sense that I know that Bree had mentioned that she was part of an effort to come up with an economic impact assessment, and I don't know where that is. But listening to this and listening to the incredible partnerships that are going on that continue to develop every day, I would really like to put a plug in for maybe getting some more support to do that kind of an assessment, to really begin to look at not only as the time, you know, for volunteers. Todd and I are, you know, retired fish biologists, but we're busy doing volunteers. So how do we put all that into these equations? And I'm charging sort of the heads of this group to think more about how to do that and how to roll that into the effective engagement that DSL has been able to have with the recent PR connection to what's going on at South Slough. That's really helped educate the rest of the state and the region of the importance of what's going on here. The other thing that's of note that I didn't put in the report, but is thinking as listening to y'all today, was that we've had a tragic decommissioning of most of our newspapers, as most places have. And our newspaper, The World, has now reduced to 2 days a week, giving you a print vehicle and an electronic version. But the new editor is like from Texas, I believe. And he just did a huge two-page spread on the reserve. And it was incredible. And he was just like jumping up and down about how important this was and everything. So I'm not sure that got out to the PR folks at DSL, but the one mistake he had in it, that he said that the bathrooms were closed due to COVID, and the bathrooms are open during the week, but not during the weekend. So, but if that was kind of interesting with lots of photos and everything. So kudos to however that happened. I don't know whether it was just serendipity, because this guy is like, he's totally clueless about so many things, but by golly, there was a miracle there. So anyway, those are just sort of some personal notes and things like that. But I also, you know, everyone here really cares about how to understand science and how to communicate and understand and support the environment that we live in that supports us. So we've been able to participate in this eelgrass restoration synthesis, and certainly the folks in the South Slough are engaged in all of that. But understanding and promoting to policymakers the importance of eelgrass communities is just incredible. And I work with the League of Women Voters too, and we just put in a piece on the blue carbon into a response to the global warming commission that the state has. So those kinds of interactions are really essential. We're also able with FOSS, Todd here has become the master of the MailChimp, and we were able to secure housing for a couple of interns, one of which was just mentioned, in terms of the problems that we have right now is not having a place to stay, even if you come down for an overnight. So thank you to, I'm not going to name the people that came forward, but that shows the community support. And again, that's huge economic support, because we're not renting a hotel room for these folks. And we're also communicating what they do to the people that are housing them. And that's an important communication vehicle. So again, it was good to see John on this, because the lamprey stuff that the citizen science program can go forward. We're so excited about that. And there's nothing more important to the ecosystems here than understanding the role of the lamprey species and how they interact and how how we can improve and restore them. So I'm going to turn it over just for Todd to mention. I also am going to introduce Todd. That I think I made this point before. I think fish biologists are really, we're pretty tight. So Todd's a retired fish biologist, and he's worked in a lot of places, and we've interacted through AFS for years. But Todd has, in his retirement, is a fire manager. And I really want him to say a few words about this. He donated, he has been in training to get ready for this fire season. We're just terrified about it. But he gets paid, but he goes to some pretty scary places. And I just want him to have a few remarks about how they work together and the team building and people understanding the environment. So Todd, you're on, and I'll let you close this conversation out.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, we just did our pack test yesterday, and I still do the arduous pack test, so I can still go out on the line. Oh yeah, so you're carrying a 40-pound pack and you do 4 miles within 45 minutes, and then I rode my bicycle from Marshfield High, where we did that, out to the BLM, where we then did our shelter deployment, winter test shelters, so we can remember how to do that. We had a pretty good discussion. The fire management officer there with the BLM had just moved up from Nevada. We all tell horror stories when we get together as old fire dogs. And I've been in this business for about 40 years, being a fish biologist and being in the fire militia. But in the last 5 years, I've been on some type 1 national teams as a human resource specialist and some other qualifications. And in the last 5 years, we've seen fire in places where we haven't seen it before, i.e. some badass fires in the Coast Range, the asbestos coast. We've seen some pretty good fires there. We've seen fire behavior that is unusual and crazy stuff. We had a big fire in Big Sur last year at 3 o'clock in the morning. The fire blew up and traveled 5 miles in less than 30 minutes. And so that's at night when humidity recovery is supposed to be high. So what we're seeing is more extreme fires, longer fire seasons, longer burnout, no pun intended, of fire personnel. So people are spread thin, fires are bigger, fires are longer. And I applaud Alice's, your efforts there at South Slough to not only educate folks as far as urban interface goes, being fire aware. The education component is huge. Clean your darn gutters out, folks. Because even here in Coos Bay, we can have an event that's going to take out a lot of houses. So again, I'm looking at my red packs right over here. They're both packed and ready to go. And my line gear, I got a brand new hard hat because you got to trade in your hard hats every 5 years. And so, I've already been called a couple of times from some teams and asking if I would be available this summer. And yeah, probably. So it's going to be interesting again. So, but Christine has all the passwords to the FOSS stuff. And I usually have computers wherever I go, so I'll still be in touch. On another note, because of that fire background, a couple of you, Alice and Deb and Jamie, I forwarded you Max Foreman's information. He's a games researcher up at University of Oregon, and he and his grad students are developing a what if game around decision models around fire. What are you, if you're a fire management team and you have an urban interface and a grasslands and a timberlands, and you have fires and you roll the dice and you do all this kind of stuff. And so it was a very interesting little decision model game that he and I played last week. And I thought, oh, this would be a good thing to pass on to Alice and Deb and folks at the South Slough because of the education background and that whole fire interface thing. So I understand he's reached out to you all, and so have fun with that. Anyway, end of report.
That's all she wrote. You got it, the rest of it written. Thank you again.
Well, thank you both. It sounds like you both have a lot you're doing in retirement. I think Chief mentioned at the outset that retirement's been very busy for him. So that happens to all of us who are really caring people and interested in the world around us. So thank you both. I also want to thank FOSS for the fundraising that you've done to help us acquire some of the property around the visitor center. We want to expand that entrance, and we may need to come back to you again for further help in that regard. But we were successful, and Bree, you might want to mention to the commission where we are on that. Also, Christine did bring up that economic study that I think NOAA had chosen us to be one of 2 places. And so you might want to give an update where we're at with that study, because I think that Sean pointed out how successful we have been in doing those kinds of things. And those are the additional type of stories that our comms team needs to be aware of if they're not already, and develop those. And I'm not sure if I saw, comms usually shows us when there's articles in newspapers about DSL or South Slough. So I'll make sure to go back and see the big one that was in the world newspaper. And yeah, that's a guy from Texas caring about the coast in Charleston. So that's fabulous. So thank you for sharing all that. Bree, can you give us a couple updates on those things?
Sure. So with regards to the acquisition, this is the 1.14 acre county property at the entrance to the visitor center. We are nearing the final stages. The last sort of due diligence piece is a phase 1 environmental assessment. And so that is being done now. And the report is expected in mid-May. So in the next few weeks, we should have that report. And that's the final piece. If there's nothing hazardous that we need to deal with on the site, we'll be able to close shortly after that. If there are any issues with the report, what they find, we'll have to address those as they come up. So that is the acquisition piece. And then the economic contribution study you mentioned, I was actually hoping that this would be ready for real time right now. The final report has been written, the communication products have been finalized, and they're nearing rollout from NOAA. I think they're scheduling a webinar right now to sort of explain the project and how to use the communication materials that were developed. So it's on my list for the July meeting agenda. So I'll have that available for you all in July, and I can provide an overview of the project and then the presentation or the communication materials that we received from that.
Bree, do you think that would be ready for the June land board meeting?
It should be. I should check. I think they're scheduling the webinar information session. The doodle poll I'm remembering was like the first 2 weeks of June.
Okay. The land board meeting's June 8th. So if you want to check on that, and if it's remotely possible to get that on our agenda, let Aaron know.
Okay.
Because we did present that to the land board earlier and said that study was coming out, and the land board was very excited to see that, the results of that.
Yeah, I'll check, and I'll check in with the folks at NOAA, the project team, and see if they, even if it's before the webinar, if they're comfortable with us releasing that.
Okay. All right. Okay. And I see that Deborah put in the link to the world, and Chris put in a link, economic guidance for coastal management professionals training.
Real quick, sorry on that. The economic conversation just spurred me to think of this, and then Saber might have more information as well. But this is a national level training that our office is offering. We've already done it once. This will be the second repeat of it, or the first repeat of it, the second offering. The registration is not currently open. That link will take you to the information page on what it is, but I believe the registration is going to open next week. The first one filled up quickly, but if any of you in your personal or professional capacities have interest in this, feel free to just check it out. It's a new one we're offering, but that conversation just made me think of it.
And Mrs. Saber, just as a follow-up, if there is interest and enough interest locally, then I can always request a individual offering here so that we can have, prioritized registration, just so you don't have to compete with, another site and possibly not be able to get a spot. So if there's interest there, I can definitely request that.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, we're in the wrap-up stage. Before we adjourn, our next scheduled meeting is July 15. Hopefully we don't have to change that, but if we do, we're pretty flexible. I appreciate y'all being flexible while I was away in Alexandria. Could not have fit this in. I got our budget meeting fit in my schedule, but it was with a 3-hour time difference. It was very difficult because my granddaughter, the 2-year-old, really needed attention, and the baby. So all has been good. Glad we're all getting back to normal. Any other comments that anyone would like to make before we sign off? Bree, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a request for the commissioners. As you know, we've started doing these staff presentations, which I think have been well received, and I get good feedback that you all are enjoying them. And so I would love, if you have topics that you would like a presentation on, please reach out and let me know, and we can figure out how to put that into our agendas for the future. So as you're reading through the packet, if there's a project or a topic that piques your interest and you're wanting to hear a little bit more about it, let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And the other thing I was going to mention is there's some positions here that have expired in terms of your terms, and we've been having difficulty getting that through the process for the last year, but we're close to wrapping it up and getting all of those into the governor's office to get those appointments made. And people just continue to serve until their replacements or their renewal. So I do appreciate that folks have been able to do that. Any other comments or questions before we sign off for today? I appreciate you've been at this for 2 hours and 10 minutes. That's good. All right, well, it sounds like we've come to a good meeting, end of a good meeting. So I'll take a motion to adjourn, which is not debatable, but it does require a second.
Motion to adjourn?
All right, Chief made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Dave Kronsteiner gives us a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, all those opposed? We're not listening to you. All right, well, thanks everyone. Really appreciate your time today. We'll bring another great meeting to a close. We're adjourned.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
bye.